There's one thing everyone fears: the silence of the late night, when the world is asleep and all that remains is the sound of the wind and your own heartbeat. But for some people, that night wasn't just silence, it was the beginning of a real nightmare. These are true horror stories about people who were completely alone at night. Each story unfolds under the weight of darkness, when there's no one left to call for help. Brace yourself, because sometimes the scariest thing isn't a ghost, but the human standing just outside your door. This was last fall during a calm, fading October dusk in the first week or two of October. I'm not entirely sure how to start this, because it honestly all happened completely out of the blue and it still feels unreal even now. It was a normal Monday afternoon. I'd gotten out of work and pulled up to my home just after sunset, thinking everything would be as peaceful as always. And usually I'll park in the garage and head inside from there, unaware that tonight would change everything. But as I pulled in, I noticed something hanging on the front door, a faint shape swaying gently in the evening breeze. So instead I parked in the driveway and went up there to see what it was, curiosity slowly mixing with an unexplained sense of dread. Taped right on the door handle was an envelope, its white surface slightly crumpled under the fading light. I knew right away it wasn't some random soliciting ad mail, because it had my name handwritten, with a pen on the front written in neat, almost unsettlingly familiar handwriting. Inside was a handwritten letter, its folded paper trembling slightly in my hands. It was short, but what it said I found incredibly strange and deeply disturbing that night. Essentially, the person mentioned they've been interested in me and wanted to meet at a specific place and time the following day. Oddly, that was one of my days off of work, but I figured it was just a chilling and maybe dangerous coincidence. The writer of the letter didn't sign it though, so I had absolutely no clue or comfort about who it was. Obviously, there was no way I was going to go anywhere and meet with some random person. My gut screamed that danger was real. I headed inside, tore up the letter, and tossed it in the trash, hoping that shredding it would erase my fear. I thought the whole thing was pretty disturbing, because they knew my name and my address, and said they were interested in me in handwriting that felt almost too intimate, which is just a strange thing to say given I had no idea who they even were, and that mystery began eating at my mind. Anyway, I thought tearing up the letter would help me not to stress about it too much, trying to convince myself nothing serious was happening, as there wasn't anything I could do about it, at least not yet. After all, it could have just been some stupid prank. I went on with my night and got in bed just before 11 o'clock, the wind quietly brushing against my windows outside. Like I mentioned before, I was off the following day, so I slept in and spent pretty much the entire day inside, trying to forget the strange feeling lingering in my mind. Can't even remember what I did all day, but I know I made dinner late, like 8 or 9, and started getting ready for bed right after. It was quiet, ordinary, almost too calm to be real. I went upstairs and into the bedroom to take a long, relaxing shower, letting the sound of running water drown every other noise. However, a little ways into it, I heard the doorbell ring. The sharp chime cut through the silence like a warning. Confused, who could have been outside my home at this time of night? I opened the shower curtain and listened for a minute, but with nothing else, I figured they left, still uneasy heart beating fast beneath the falling water. I wouldn't have answered the door anyway. I closed the curtain and continued with my shower. As I stood in the water and tried to relax, though, I started connecting the dots between the letter from yesterday and the odd doorbell ring. I knew it could have been me completely overthinking it, but also the feeling that I wasn't alone in the house grew stronger with every minute passing. And then I heard something. It sounded like a few light thuds or maybe creaks somewhere, right outside the shower curtain, so faint yet chillingly close to me. I froze and listened, then quickly shut off the shower and moved the curtain aside. Nothing was there. My breath felt heavy, echoing in the silence. My heart was still racing as I got out, dried off, and got dressed. Every small sound now felt like a threat. First thing I knew I had to do was check the front door, the one fragile barrier between me and the unknown. I picked up the paper and closed the door, then unfolded it. It was a note in the same handwriting as the one from yesterday. As I read it, a deep chill crept down my spine. I could feel my blood rush and my face getting pale. The writer was clearly angry about me missing the meetup earlier today, their tone shifting from curiosity to fury. It was like they really thought I was supposed to show up, as if I'd broken some twisted promise. And at the end of the letter, they signed their initials, this time DN, a detail that made my blood run cold. This was incredibly creepy and disturbing, as it was way more than just a small note. It suddenly felt far too real, crossing a terrifying line of obsession. This felt way more personal and unsettling, and much less like just some small prank. I genuinely didn't know what to do because he was already gone and I still didn't know who it was. That helpless confusion settled deep into my chest, feeding silent fear. Even with their initials, I had no idea, and that made everything feel even more personal. I paced around the living room for a while, a good 30 minutes at least each minute, stretching longer than the last. Even then, as I paced around in my own home, I kept getting this uneasy feeling that I was being watched, like invisible eyes were fixed behind every dark corner. I'd look and check out the windows and the door over and over, but never saw anything. The silence outside only made it worse. Eventually, I knew I'd have to sleep, though my mind screamed that something wasn't right. Overall, though, I decided that in the morning I would go to the police station and bring in the letter and see what they had to say about it, trying to convince myself the worst was finally over. I started heading upstairs. As I reached the top, I suddenly heard those thumping or creaking sounds, echoing faintly through the dark, empty hallway. The same ones I'd heard while in the shower, coming from inside the bedroom, sending a chill racing straight through my spine. I hurried into the room, my heart pounding harder than before. Nothing. Not a single thing in there to warrant the sounds I'd been hearing. I'll admit they weren't concerning sounds at all, but in that silent darkness, every noise felt alive. It was just with everything else going on that it made me feel like everything could be something, a shadow, a whisper, or a hidden presence, even though it likely was nothing at all. I closed and locked my bedroom door tightly, heart still pounding hard just in case. Then checked the closet and every other spot in the room carefully under the dim yellow light to make me feel better. And just before getting in bed, I remembered one other place. I never went out there, but there was a small balcony attached to this master bedroom. I was a private person and always kept the blinds closed, living quietly and avoiding outside eyes, so I often forgot it was even there. I walked over and pushed aside the first few blinds so I could get to the door handle, my hands trembling as silence filled the room. I didn't even have to grab it to see that it was already unlocked. A chill shot through me instantly. There was no way I left it like this. I always triple check every lock before bed. However, I didn't get a chance to open the door because just a second later, a figure moved from the corner of the outside balcony, its shadow sliding across the glass like a nightmare. I jolted my eyes at him, seeing he was staring at me, his face pale under the dim balcony light as he moved closer to the other side of the door. I turned and sprinted out of the bedroom, my heartbeat pounding louder than the floorboards. I heard the balcony door open as I was leaving the creek, echoing like a death sentence. I ran for the closest neighbor I knew would help me, praying someone would still be awake that night. The man didn't seem to be able to find where I ran off to. Police were at my house and searching around within 10 minutes, their flashlights slicing through the quiet suburban darkness. I was still incredibly nervous because I knew how awful it'd be if the man got away. In that moment, my heart pounded with unbearable dread. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. They never found him. The night swallowed him completely without leaving a single trace. Me and a couple officers started going over the time frame of everything taking place, trying desperately to reconstruct the nightmare piece by piece, and it's pretty apparent that the man broke in while I was in the shower. The sound of running water had masked his silent intrusion. Likely the sounds I'd heard while in there were from him opening and closing the balcony door where he went to hide. He'd been only inches away, separated by nothing but thin air. So, since I'd heard those same sounds again, he must have at some point gone back inside the house while I was pacing around thinking about the letter. The realization froze every drop of blood in my veins, which makes that whole feeling of me being watched even more disturbing. It wasn't imagination anymore, it was proof of his presence. And most of all, what I find really unsettling is that from the short glimpse I got from the man looking at me, I felt like he looked oddly familiar. That face echoed somewhere deep within my memory. Not like someone I knew, but maybe just someone I'd seen in passing at some point before. A stranger from the background of ordinary days, now a nightmare. It kills me that I can't figure out where or when I'd seen him. It really could have been anything, like just passing him at a grocery store, which makes it way more disturbing that that was enough to get this man to follow and stalk me and form this dangerous fixation on me. The thought still claws at my mind every single night. A whole lot more could have happened that night, and all I can be is thankful that I got away mostly unharmed. Each breath since then has felt like a fragile blessing. It's been almost a year, and so far nothing else has come up. No police updates, no strange visits, only uneasy quiet. No notes, no weird sounds, nothing. But the silence itself screamed louder than anything before. I hope it's done, but even now I'm still constantly looking over my shoulder, unsure who's watching. Every shadow feels alive, every glance a possible threat. I was driving from LA all the way back to the East Coast, trying to escape the memories, but fear followed like a shadow. I had taken the road trip to see a bunch of friends for a wedding, and ended up staying for over a week. The laughter and music still echoed faintly in my mind. Because I stayed a little bit longer, I only had 4 days to get back home before my next shift at work. The countdown felt relentless, pressing against every passing mile. So I was really pushing it with how long I was driving. The highway stretched endlessly beneath the dim yellow lights. It was 1 o'clock a.m., and my eyes were killing me. Fatigue blurred the lines between road and reality itself. It felt like my eyelids weighed 100 pounds. Every blink felt heavier than the miles ahead. The only caffeine I had was a hot coffee from a gas station 3 hours back, so not very hot anymore. Its bitter taste lingered as the night stretched endlessly, and I was in the middle of nowhere. No lights, no houses, just the hum of the tires. It felt like a dead highway, the kind where silence itself begins to whisper fear. Nothing on either side of it, and barely any cars or trucks around. Empty fields swallowed by shadows on both horizons. Just the occasional car speeding past me, only to disappear down the road 30 seconds later, their taillights fading like ghosts into the dark. As I tried to keep my eyes open, I noticed again headlights coming up behind me. The faint glow cut through the lonely darkness of the road. They weren't very bright, so it must have been a pretty old car without those crazy bright LEDs everyone has nowadays. Its dull yellow beams looked weary like eyes from another era. The car was also going a lot slower than most that passed by. Something about that sluggish pace felt deliberately unnatural. This one took forever to catch up to me. Each second it grew closer, my tension quietly rising. After tailing behind for a minute, it merged into the other lane and started to pass. But even that simple motion carried a strange watching intent. I kept my eyes on the road, just making sure I stayed in my lane to let them through. The silence of the highway felt unnervingly heavy. But after a while of them not actually passing, I looked to my left to see what they were doing. The headlights flickered faintly against the empty asphalt. The car was matching my speed. Right beside me, some old, dusty, dark red car, and their window was down, its paint dull, engine humming like a low growl in the night. From what I could see, there was just one man in the car driving, obviously, but he was also staring at me, his eyes locked onto mine, cold and unblinking. I had my window up still, so I don't know if he actually could see me, with it being dark and with the reflections and all, but his gaze pierced through the glass like a knife, but he was looking at my window as if he could. It felt intentional, cold, and disturbingly personal. The man didn't try to hide it either. Instead, he seemed to want me to see him clearly. His light was on inside his car so I could see him clear as day. That eerie glow trapped us both in silent tension. He looked redayed and kind of drunk just from his expressions and movements, yet his stare was too steady to be random. But he remained at the same speed and just stared at me. Every passing second felt endless, stretched by fear. It really freaked me out. My hands clenched tighter around the cold steering wheel. I tried slowing down, but he slowed down too. Every move I made, he mirrored like a predator waiting. I slowed down even more, and again he matched my speed. The silence between our cars felt suffocating, almost alive. So then I slowed down an absurd amount, like down to 25 miles per hour on the highway. Headlights behind me pulsed like a heartbeat in the dark. And finally he didn't copy me, and just held his pace and kept driving. The instant relief felt unreal, fragile, and temporary. He disappeared down the road a minute later, but fear lingered heavy in the rearview mirror. I didn't know what the hell to think of that. My thoughts spun in circles, searching for any logic. Maybe he was a creep, maybe drunk, or honestly, maybe both. Every possibility seemed more disturbing than the last. Only a couple minutes after whatever that was happened, I was back to struggling to stay awake. I knew I needed some caffeine and possibly even some rest for a minute. Fatigue blurred my fear into a dull, uneasy haze. 15 minutes down the road, I pulled off the highway and into a really small rest stop. The quiet lot waited empty, cold, and far too still. How the hell was he pulling up behind me again? My pulse spiked. This made absolutely no sense at all. I never passed him, at least not knowingly. There hadn't been a single chance or opening on that road, and there was nowhere else to pull off. Every mile behind me had been nothing but empty darkness. He would have had to pull into the grass off the highway pretty far out and discreetly wait for me to pass. The thought of him hiding there sent chills down my spine. Otherwise, I'd have seen his car on the side of the road. There was simply no logical way this could be happening. I got in and looked at my mirrors for a second. My reflection stared back, trembling, surrounded by the night. He didn't pull in behind me though. He went right up next to me like he did on the highway. His engine rumbled low, echoing through the empty rest stop. I could just feel his eyes staring at me, too much to ignore. That gaze felt heavy, almost burning through the glass. I looked over, and sure enough, that's what he was doing. Every muscle in my body tensed in frozen disbelief, staring right at me with those red, unsettling eyes. They glowed faintly under the dim yellow parking light. What did this dude want from me? The question screamed louder than the silence around us. I turned my car on, but the guy started talking. His voice slithered through the air, slow, deliberate, menacing. He was yelling something, trying to get my attention through the window. His voice cracked through the cold air like a warning. I looked over again, and he reached over and opened his passenger door, motioning for me to get in. That false invitation carried a strange, twisted charm of danger. With this disturbingly friendly expression on his face, I started to pull away, glancing over one more time and seeing the instant shift into a dead stare. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by something predatory and cold. I got back onto the highway, but the guy followed. The dark road ahead felt endless as fear gripped tighter. He kept trying to do the same thing, where he'd merge into the other lane and match my speed. Each move felt like a deliberate act of menace. But this time, I wasn't having it. I was getting a little more aggressive, trying to keep him away from me. Adrenaline surged, turning fear into desperate defiance. But he matched my energy, also getting more aggressive. The highway became a deadly battleground between us. I could have sworn he even tried to pit maneuver me several times, but I braked just quick enough before he could hit my car. The tires screeched survival, balanced on a knife's edge. Eventually, I saw one of those emergency vehicle U-turn spots. It appeared like a final chance carved into the darkness, a pass-through to get onto the other side of the highway that went in the opposite direction. The headlights flashed across the barrier like a desperate beacon. In a rather dangerous and illegal split-second decision, I turned onto it before he could even react and follow me. Tires screamed, my pulse exploded, freedom bought by pure instinct. As I safely got onto the other side of the highway and sped in the other direction, I looked in my mirrors. My hands were trembling, gripping the wheel like a lifeline. I felt my heart continue racing for a moment. Each heartbeat echoed louder than the engine itself. For a second, his brake lights turned on, but it seemed he gave up. Those dim red lights felt like the end of a nightmare. As a moment later, his lights faded out and continued the other way. Darkness swallowed the road, leaving only silence behind. I was shaking for the next little bit, finding a gas station and just taking a break for an hour to cool off, and to keep distance between me and that guy. Under harsh fluorescent lights, safety finally felt fragile, but real. During that time, I put in a tip for the police, mainly saying I thought he was just a drunk driver dangerously, but it didn't come up to much of anything. For a moment, I truly believed it was all over. That was until 4 days later, well after I'd made it back home. Those quiet days felt fragile, like borrowed calm before the storm. Having time to actually breathe, I looked up if the cops ever caught any drunk drivers on that road recently, thinking I might find the dude's mugshot or something. What I found instead would shatter every illusion of safety. But what I found made this whole thing more disturbing than I ever could have imagined. The truth hit me like a freezing wave of dread. A day before I left LA, there had been a disappearance of someone on that very road. The same stretch of asphalt where I almost died. They found their car in the grass and the person was just gone. No footprints, no struggle, just silent absence. No traces. The only clue they had was from a different driver on the road who mentioned they saw a rusty red car driving erratically around the car that was later found abandoned in the grass. The exact same red car that had hunted me that night. Reading the whole case almost felt like deja vu. It was as if fate had replayed my nightmare twice. It was exactly like what I experienced that night, only I made it out safely. Every word of the report mirrored my own terror perfectly. Had things gone any other way, that night could have taken a really disturbing turn and I likely would have disappeared too. The realization sent a deep chill crawling down my spine. This past winter, I stayed in a cabin in the northeast part of Washington state for a week. I thought isolation would bring peace. I was wrong. It was a winter cabin meant for staying in during the cold season and enjoying the winter scenery out in the mountains, which usually wasn't possible in regular three-season cabins. The air was crisp, the silence almost too complete. When I got there, it hadn't snowed yet. The ground was bare, waiting quietly for its white shroud. But by the time I woke up, after my first night, snow had begun coming down. Thick flakes drifted endlessly, swallowing the world outside. It was a lot too. Enough to seal me inside with nothing but my thoughts. Enough to keep me cozied up inside for the whole day. The storm outside painted a false sense of safety. The fireplace with the cabin look and feel made for a great relaxing time. Crackling flames whispered comfort against the rising wind. I got real tired around 9 p.m. and decided to get to bed, but I had to run out to my car real quick to grab a bag I forgot to bring in yesterday. It was supposed to be a harmless, quiet errand. I put my shoes and jacket on, then opened the door to run outside when I immediately saw that the snow on the porch was messed with, like something had been there. The prints twisted the calm night into sudden dread. When I got further out the spots, and the snow became more clearly footprints. Each step was carved deep as if by heavy, deliberate boots. I could even see the print that their boots left behind. The shape was sharp, frozen, and horribly human. I then looked to see where they came from, but lost sight of them going out toward the woods. The trail dissolved into darkness, swallowed by endless white silence. There was no saying how long ago this was, but I'd never heard them on the porch. That quiet realization tightened my chest with quiet creeping fear. Whoever it was didn't knock or anything. The silence outside pressed heavier than any knock could. I got what I needed from the car, then headed back in. Snow crunched softly beneath my boots like a fading warning. Since they didn't knock and I didn't get a text from the cabin rental place, I figured it wasn't anything important. A small comfort, one that felt strangely fragile. I got in bed and fell asleep. The firelight flickered, gently disguising the unease in the room. For the next 2 days, I was at the cabin. Time blurred in quiet isolation beneath the falling snow. There wasn't all that much to mention. I did the same, pretty much being inside by the fireplace all day. The warmth of the flames masked a growing chill of dread. But through those 2 days, several more times I checked outside and saw fresh footprints in the snow. Each new trail deepened the sense of someone always near. Always the same ones coming up to the porch and going back in the same direction. Like a pattern carved by unseen intentions, silent and haunting. So on the 3rd day, I decided to go in that direction and see what was out there. Curiosity outweighed fear, pushing me toward the truth. I put on a heavy jacket and walked into the woods. The cold air bit my skin as I crossed into the unknown. The footprints were long covered up by then by the snowfall from last night, each step I took sinking into cold, untouched silence. So I was just walking in the general direction I'd remembered seeing them going. Instinct guided me where reason could no longer help. I only made it a little ways into the trees before realizing everything looked the same, every trunk and shadow blending into one endless void, like it was all just a blanket of snow over everything in every direction. The world had vanished beneath a suffocating sea of white, and with the downfall already starting to cover up my tracks, I knew I risked getting lost if I went any deeper. Each falling flake felt like the forest erasing my existence. From being out there though, I saw nothing of interest that anyone could have been out there for. No sounds, no life, only the haunting stillness of snow. No paths or roads or trails. Just endless white stretching beneath a silent gray sky. I went back to the cabin and warmed up. The fire crackled, but my unease burned brighter still. Strangely, after that, no footprints showed up on the porch for the rest of that day, as if whoever left them had melted into the snow forever. It was like whoever it was knew I was looking for them, and so they kept away. That thought offered fragile comfort. I didn't quite believe. That's what I was hoping for anyway. Hope felt thin, stretched over quiet fear. Hours later, the sun fell past the trees, and the woods and cabin were quiet. Shadows lengthened, swallowing the last traces of daylight. The soft breeze of the snowfall outside was the only noise aside from the crackling fireplace. Each pop of the fire echoed through the empty room. I hadn't thought about the strange footprints in a while, but peace, this deep, always hides something beneath. I stayed up relatively late, not getting in bed until 12 o'clock a.m. I fell asleep quickly with the winter ambiance outside. The fire dimmed, the cold night whispering against the walls. I felt like I was knocked out for a while, definitely a couple cycles of sleep, before I woke up. The cabin felt still wrapped in uneasy quiet, so it was probably about 3 o'clock a.m., the hour when silence turns into something darker. The sound of wind and snow outside were still coming through the cabin walls, a steady lullaby that suddenly felt too perfect, too still, but there was another sound, a faint noise breaking the peace, deliberate and slow, a crunch every couple of seconds. Someone stepping in the snow very, very slowly. Each step sounded heavy, deliberate, and chillingly close. Honestly, I don't know if I would have known it was footsteps, let alone woken up if I didn't already know about the footprints being outside the cabin. That memory struck like a frozen knife through the dark. That's how slow they were walking. It felt as if time itself was holding its breath. I sat up in bed. My pulse thundered in my ears, beneath the blanket of silence. For some reason, I was pretty calm. Nervous for sure, but not scared really. It felt like the calm before something terrible. I was confident I could hold my own if something were to happen. That confidence, I realize now, was reckless and fragile. I know it was very arrogant of me, maybe dangerously so. My pride whispered louder than my instincts ever did. I listened until the sound stopped. It seemed to go somewhere on the other end of the cabin, the back wall, maybe where the fireplace was. The silence that followed felt heavier than footsteps themselves, so after a few minutes of not hearing anything else, I got up and left the bedroom looking down the main hallway. Unknowingly, I stepped straight toward the waiting nightmare. It was really dark. There were no lights built into this hallway. The air felt heavy, swallowing every trace of sound, so when I looked down, I saw nothing. Only endless blackness stretching into suffocating silence. In that moment, though, a very strong, uncontrollable feeling took over the false confidence that I had just a few moments ago. My body froze, ruled by a fear older than reason. Suddenly, I was really nervous that something was wrong, more than just someone walking around outside. It felt like the house itself was holding its breath. I took a few steps into the hallway. Each step echoed like a warning through the still air. Still, I heard nothing. The silence felt alive, heavy with unseen eyes. I moved all the way to the end where the living room kitchen was, the shadows stretching longer with every cautious breath. And just when I took a step toward the front door, the world snapped a sudden noise behind me. I heard a loud thump on the floor behind me. It was sharp, heavy, and terrifyingly close. I spun around and looked down the hallway I just came from. My pulse roared as darkness seemed to move. I only caught a quick sight of someone moving quickly, through the shadows rushing down the hallway toward me. A blur of motion, the nightmare finally took shape. I ran straight for the front door, grabbing the keys I'd left right by it and running out barefoot through the snow to my car. Each freezing step burned like fire under my feet. I got in and couldn't see anything at all, as the entire windshield was covered in a thick layer of snow. Panic clawed at me as darkness swallowed every direction. I didn't know if he was chasing me or right in front of the car, which made the whole thing even more horrifying. The world shrank to silence, fear, and blinding white chaos. Thankfully, I could see out of my back windshield, being upright and small, so I began backing out, going as fast as I could down the gravel driveway. Snow whipped behind me as the tires fought for grip. I did end up making it out of there. My heart pounded louder than the roaring engine beneath me. It took over an hour for a cop to show up. Each minute felt like an eternity in frozen fear. And by then, the footprints of him leaving the cabin were covered, so it wasn't even clear where he went. The storm had swallowed his trail and all my answers. From what we could find, though, the man got in through a window on the far wall near the fireplace. The cold air still clung to the broken frame. Putting what happened together, most likely he then quietly crept to the farthest bedroom down the hall to look for me. His footsteps must have echoed softly through the dark wooden floor. It was the only other one aside from the one I was staying in. Fate decided the difference between my door and his. Had he chosen correctly, I would have been face to face with him and had nowhere to run. One wrong choice saved my life by pure chance. But instead, I left my room at the perfect timing, giving me a chance to escape. That single heartbeat between danger and freedom saved my life. It's insane, and honestly terrifying how just a couple of seconds made all the difference. Those brief moments felt like the universe choosing mercy over death. Thank you for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to share your own story to be featured in an upcoming video, please email me at nighthorrorstoriesYes@gmail.com. Every story has the power to touch someone's heart, and who knows, maybe your story will be the next one told. Send it in today, and let's share unforgettable moments together.